Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, by Shem Baraka Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh by Shem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to Akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya with another video. I'm going to start it off with Joel chapter 3 verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, and we're living in these times right now, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah, the southern kingdom, the so-called Negroes, the so-called African Americans in the United States and the Negroes in the West Indies, and Jerusalem, the northern kingdom, the so-called Latinos and so-called Native Americans, the elect of both tribes waking up to the fact that they're Israelites and returning back to their power, Yahweh by Shem Yahushai, and following these laws, statutes, and commandments to the best of their abilities so they can have that protective hedge of Yahweh by Shem Yahushai over them during these coming terrible times of Jacob's trouble. Verse 2, I will also gather all nations, these heathen nations, the United States of America, the state of Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iran, India, Britain, Germany, China, Russia, etc., and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, that Middle Eastern region, and Jehoshaphat means Yahweh's Shabbat, or Yahweh's judgment, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. You heathen nations are being gathered into the valley of Jehoshaphat as punishment for all the iniquity you've committed against the children of Israel, not just in the past, but all the way up until today, chiefly you Edomites, or so-called white people. Verse 3, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Slavery. Not just the so-called Negroes being taken from the west coasts of Africa to the Americas, but also the so-called Latinos and so-called Native Americans losing their land in the Americas and also being brought across the Atlantic as slaves in Europe. The transatlantic slave trade went both ways. And also what you heathens are doing to the Israelites today, putting Planned Parenthoods in our neighborhoods, giving us poisonous food and water, putting the woman over the man, and shooting our people down dead in the streets by these cops. But what I'll be focusing on in this video is that one of the main nations that's going to be in the valley of Jehoshaphat to fight against the United States and the state of Israel on behalf of Iran, because when war with Iran starts, that's going to be what's going to kick off this battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, that war of Armageddon. And that country I'm speaking of is Russia, which biblically is known as Gog, the north country, as well as the Medes. This is Ezekiel chapter 38. I'm going to read verse 1 through 7. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, those Russian Edomites, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. That's speaking of Yahweh by Shem Yahushai, putting that old confrontational Cuban Missile Crisis Soviet Union spirit back on these Russians. And I will bring thee forth and all thine army. I will gather all nations down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, all their military hardware, their tanks, their jets, their warships, their missiles, you name it. Verse 5, Persia, which is the historic name for Iran, Ethiopia and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Not only are the Russians bringing their military equipment down for themselves, but they're also going to be supplying their military equipment, such as the S-300 and S-400, to their allies. Verse 6, Gomer, which is the biblical name for Turkey, and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And I'll be profiling a video on RT America titled, Breaking Russian Navy heading toward Persian Gulf to show how Gog is being a guard unto the company of nations that are assembled unto her, chiefly Persia or Iran.
America, nation's capital. Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. Another day, another big name being mentioned in connection with the Jeffrey Epstein story. This time, it's a former prime minister of one of the most powerful countries in the world. That's coming up in just a little bit. But we're going to begin with a blockbuster of a story that involves the Russian and Iranian navies. You know how in recent weeks the Strait of Hormuz has become a hotspot? Down drones, tanker attacks, accusations being hurled back and forth between the Iranian government and the Trump administration. Let me show you something. Let me examine for you why the Strait of Hormuz, first of all, is not just another waterway. It is the most important choke point in the entire world. Let's look at the numbers. 21 million barrels of oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That's about a fifth of the entire world's consumption of oil. And that's why so many experts have long feared that, look, if there's going to be another world war or some kind of conflagration, military conflagration like that, it is in this narrow waterway that it will originate, in the Persian Gulf and more specifically in the Strait of Hormuz.
I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat.
So right now, that waterway is patrolled by the Iranian Navy because it's in their backyard. But the U.S. Navy and more recently the Brits, the British Navy, have increased their presence there. So what's the news today? What's new, Rick Sanchez? Here's the answer. The news is that we can now add the Russian Navy to that list. The Russian Navy. In fact, in an official statement released by the office of Rear Admiral Hussein Kandazi of the Iranian Navy, we learn that the Russians will join the Iranians in joint naval drills. And the announcement comes with this message that's obviously aimed at the heart of both Washington and London. Quote, "The situation in the Persian Gulf is absolutely calm, despite the fact that the United States and the United Kingdom, by their lies and their bluff, are trying to make this region look unsafe and make it so." All right, that's the comment from that guy you see right there. He's one of the big poobahs in the Iranian Navy. Now, the question is, will four navies vying for space in a crowded waterway that's barely 21 miles across in some areas make it more or less safe? This is the news with Rick Sanchez, where we focus on stories like this, stories the other guys won't tell you about on days like this, because we believe it's time to do news again. These are the stories, and these are the questions that we expect that you will be asking tomorrow. Is the world more or less dangerous with the Russian Navy in the Gulf? Why are you being asked to subsidize farmers hurt by Trump tariffs? And who is the latest global newsmaker ensnared in this Epstein scandal? But we're going to lead the A block tonight with the news of these joint military exercises between the Russian and the Iranian navies. Why is Russia doing this? Because it appears that Moscow wants to take a more active role in the Persian Gulf. And with the backing of China, it's ready to send a signal to both the United States and to NATO that Russia will now compete, will now vie for influence in that same region.
Be thou a guard unto them.
Story that we've been following. Here is our correspondent, Yulia Shapovalova from Moscow.
The planned joint drills in the northern Indian Ocean, especially near the Strait of Hormuz, represent a significant development as the Russian Navy has been carrying out fewer operations in the region in recent years. It scaled back its presence there as a result of the decline in piracy around the Horn of Africa, where all 4 Russian fleets have been involved in continuous combat for several years. At the end of July, the media reported on the upcoming joint exercises between the Russian and Iranian navies. The Iranian Navy's commander, Hossein Hanzadi, said the drills will be held no later than March 2020.
Regarding the conduct of the exercises of the naval forces of the 2 countries in the Indian Ocean, we have reached an agreement. We hope that they will be held before the end of this year.
The Rear Admiral noted that this signed agreement is a turning point in military cooperation between the 2 countries. An interesting question that then arises is whether Moscow will deliver weapons to Tehran, especially given the growing risk of conflict between the United States and the Islamic Republic. Currently, most military technical cooperation with Iran is blocked by UN Security Council Resolution number 2231. It bans the supply of a range of arms and military equipment to Iran until the summer of 2020. Presently, the Iranian armed forces are in need of modern military technology. As a result of sanctions, most of the country's equipment dates back to the 1960s and 80s. At the same time, it should be noted that such large-scale deliveries require a lot of preparation, even though there is still a year left before the official lifting of the ban on the supply of military systems to Iran. Plus, no one guarantees that the United States will not decide to conduct a military operation earlier. Recently, the situation in the Persian Gulf region has heated up due to several Iran-related incidents. On the evening of July 19th, Tehran announced the capture of a British tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. According to Iranian media reports, their military stopped the ship for violating several rules at once. Prior to that, the United States shot down an Iranian drone in the Gulf of Hormuz when it flew close to an American landing ship. Before that, it was reported that the Iranian side shot down an American military drone. All the events happened after 2 oil tankers were attacked in the Gulf of Oman on June 13th. Yulia Shapovalova for the news of Rick Sanchez.
Thank you so much, Julia, for that report. Joining us now, former Pentagon official Michael Maloof. This is really fascinating. Think about it. Russia and Iran became allies, obviously, with everything that was going on in Syria. But still, this is surprising because Russia has not wanted to commit in terms of exporting military hardware to Iran. But here they are now saying to the rest of the world, we're going to partner with Iran in this region. Why, Michael?
Well, they have shown some tendency toward giving some arms to Iran, the S-300 at one point. But this is part of a larger picture. The fact that they're doing maneuvers is just an outer manifestation.
And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, their military equipment, not just for themselves, but for their allies, such as Iran.
Of a new policy, or a recent policy, that was put out by the Deputy Foreign Minister Bogdanov on what the Russian foreign policy will be in the Middle East. It's going to be one more of power broker and working more cooperatively with all countries, which would include not only Saudi Arabia, but also Iran. Unlike the United States, which is only sided with one. Also, the United States has 30 bases and what have you. Russia only has 1.
So is this a message they're trying to send to NATO and to the United States?
Yes.
And probably to London as well with their recent excursions?
Yeah, the fact that the United States really doesn't want to be in the Middle East any longer, because we're oil independent now, for the most part. And the fact that this is a region of influence and imperative for Russia and also for China. We're seeing that happening too.
It's fascinating, by the way, that China, and everything I've read about this report today seems to indicate that China is backing the Russians in this move. It's almost like they called Beijing and said, we're going to do this. You guys in? Right?
Yeah. But this is part of a much, much larger...
I will gather all nations down into the valley of Jehoshaphat.
It's a scenario that is occurring here. Both Russia, China, and Iran are...
That's pretty much it with this video. Back in Joel chapter 3, I'm going to jump down to verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, you Edomites or so-called white people, you Moabites or so-called Chinese, you Ishmaelites or so-called Arabs, you Elamites or so-called East Indians, you Hamites or so-called Africans, and the men of the Lord, chiefly GMS or Great Millstone, are proclaiming this to you Gentiles, not only on the highways and byways, but through these video epistles. Prepare war, the battle in the valley of Jehoshaphat, war of Armageddon, World War III. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. These Russian warships going down to the Persian Gulf to do drills with the Iranian Navy. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. Such as Iran taking those oil tankers in defiance to the Western powers because they know that they have Russia in their back pocket. Verse 11, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, those mighty ones being the death angels of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, waiting to get the order to release all this destruction. Verse 12, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about, for all the iniquity you've committed against the children of Israel, not just in the past, but all the way up until today. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come and get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. World War III, which is going to be nuclear, is on the horizon, and there's nothing anybody can do to avert that, because it's all through the will of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai. So to you sincere Akim out there, now's not the time to be getting weak in the faith. You should be fully assured in your faith in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai and have all 10 toes down in this truth, pushing this word as hard as you possibly can to make your calling and election sure. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified, and as always, I'm going to say Abba Babal, Kwam Yasharala. Till next time, Shalom.